Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Some of you might think that this peace greeting is not appropriate for this message, but I don't mean hostility when I record this and when I say this. However, what I will say to you as well is that I still have to tell certain truths. I'm required to. It's not optional. So I'm going to go ahead and tell them. I'm going to start by addressing women that are not interested in fighting a gender war, and I mean genuinely not interested in it to the extent that they actually value men like they value women. I'll start by addressing you and pointing certain things out. Men who have done no harm to any women, emotionally or physically, are not owed anything special just because we've not done any wrong to women, unless it was an accident. But likewise, you're not necessarily owed anything special from men, especially the men that don't know you from Adam, simply because you're not playing games and aren't fighting a gender war and aren't harming men, physically or emotionally. Do you deserve fair treatment? Absolutely. You should not be mistreated. You should not be in danger. But deserving anything special is not necessarily the case. You're not owed that right off the bat, just like we're not. But you should still never have to pay a price for how the other ladies view and treat men. And if you are serious about this sort of thing, if you were serious about at least valuing men, then it is in our best interest to defend you from the ones that don't. Do we owe it? Well, that depends on what our arrangement with you is. But is it in our best interest? Yes. So there's good and bad news for you. I want there to be good news for you, but what there is good and bad news in spite of my wishes. Now, the sad thing is that you, like most men, can become a casualty in the gender war. If you count being by yourself in old age a casualty. I've told men before in a social media group to not assume the worst about any individual woman, and yet the relationship between the genders as a whole in the West is so bad, I can't ignore it. And I've got to tell men to remain reserved, because you ladies that actually value men, especially those of you that do so when you're nice to look at, when you're young, are so rare, or you're so rarely outdoors and single at the same time that almost none of us will ever meet you, let alone marry you. We don't know what the stats are and as to actually how rare you are, because how do you quantify and qualify the definition of a good woman in a way that someone can go around and take a study? We don't know if you're the majority or minority. It doesn't matter. You're actually rare in our real lives. So the truth is, even you are more likely to fall victim to the charms of men who womanize and break hearts than you are to even notice the men who don't womanize and therefore have to learn basic skills that you want men to know. There is one thing that you share with the other ladies. The ones that actually mean us harm, there's one other thing that you share in common. If you are an innocent lady, then you by definition are not lying to men about what women want. But there are a lot of women that are no good for men, and they don't lie, they just are very silent about what women want. You generally share the silence. You're going to have to break that and just tell the men the truth about what it is that y'all want in your heart of hearts and what you're actually going to seek out because you're a good lady. But when you find out that some man you liked is a disappointment, the fact is that even the next man will meet the consequences of this if you're not careful to not bleed on him. Because even if you're an innocent lady in your intention, and I'm not vilifying you, obviously, because of that, you're still trained in the way that we all are. Who actually sat down and explained to you explicitly, the innocent woman, how to not bleed on the next man? You know that it's wrong to bleed on the next man, to take out on him what the last man did to you. You already know that it's not okay for a man to bleed on you from whatever the last woman did to him, and most of us men know this too. But whoever sat you down, did anyone ever sit you down and teach you specifically that it is wrong to bleed on the next man and how not to? Socially speaking, it's unlikely anyone ever did. That's what I mean by the training. I don't blame you for the training. That's something you received. It's not something you started. You mean no harm, categorically, because I'm addressing you now based on that category. But because you're so rare, frankly, you've got more options. But you're taught to not go and get your man. And if you did, many men wouldn't know that you're different at first. It would take time. You would be the main ones to know what it's like from a man's perspective. You'd be the first ones. That would give you an advantage if you were able to shoot your shot, so to speak. If you're not able to, you can't. But that does mean you will not be able to gain an understanding that the other women don't have of what it's like from the man's perspective. The choice is yours. It's sad that you may be passed over if more Western men listen to what I'm saying about not approaching, and more of them are getting the message anyway, even if not from me. But the good news is that you have a higher chance of keeping who you want by simply not imitating the other ladies who mean harm and who have a certain attitude towards my gender. And so for you, there is the good and the bad news, and I hope I explained it well, increasing your chance of you finding the good news. I mean well for you. Now, to the ladies in the West in general, mostly to the ones who are either confused, or you're not sure where you are, or you know that you look at men as tools and you look at men as everything that Dr. Tiasan Johnson tells us at the end of his videos that we're not. I'm addressing you now, and I'll start by saying that neither I nor the manosphere in general is about dehumanizing you as women. We are about not accepting bad deals. We do not advocate that your male relatives cut you off altogether when you're not a threat and you don't provoke this. But understand, we, not I, but we are telling men to not approach you and validate you romantically, maritally, or even just for them draws. In all honesty, there are men who will tell each other to not approach you for anything outside of fornicating, getting under them draws. But I'll tell men to not approach you even for that, because I can't condone it. Outside of business, directions, or friendships as much as can be appropriate between the genders, I'll tell men not to approach you. I will tell men to not approach you even for fornication, for the reason I just told you. But if a man has nothing to offer you, or he has something that women in the West can't stand, well then I don't have a reason to tell them not to approach, because frankly, many women already have the same idea in mind, that they'll never approach a man unless they're in a pinch for options, and maybe even never then if they're just the least nice to look at, while going after everything else in life that you want because you're strong and independent. Now, when you will go after and take initiative to gain all the things in life you want because of your strength and independence, and would make the least bit of effort for a guy you like, this only sends a message to men that we're less valuable intrinsically than women in your eyes, and even of a negative value right off the bat. If we're so invaluable, who taught us to be exactly what many women don't want? We all have mothers, so how are many of us by default just becoming exactly what you find bothersome? Not just what you don't want, but what you specifically dislike, like below average. Simply put, I'm telling men to not approach you because there's no right way for men to do so. And in addition, the low success rate that cold approaches have makes it stupid to do, unwise. Then on top of that, you have too much to gain socially between your crew if you loudly shoot a man down, nuclearly reject him. Not just decline, but nuclearly reject him. Whereas if you do this, everyone that sees this happening to him, and nowadays there's a camera in every cell phone, and once everyone sees this happen, every environment in which he is seen, either live or recorded, is going to be an environment in which he struck out with everybody. So if he strikes out with you in a restaurant, he struck out with every woman in that restaurant. If he struck out with you at work, he struck out with every woman at that job. If he strikes out with you in church, he strikes out with every woman in that church. And if he strikes out with you in the mosque, he strikes out with every lady in that mosque. And this has been around. This vanity has been around since even Malcolm X was alive and preaching. He put this in his autobiography. This man who said that the black woman Was the Least Protected also said that women had to be taught harsh things about themselves and how they drive their men away, trying to hold black men to soap opera and TV show materialist standards. This isn't something new, but men's knowledge of it is new. Malcolm X, whom Sisters of Today quote, was known to preach tough love to women in the temples of the NOI when he spoke to them. Betty mentioned that to him in the X movie during the scenes of the courtship before marriage. Oh, I heard you hard on the sisters. Yeah, of course he is. We're now at a time when men's testosterone is lower, and a lot of this is due to male bashing. See, I just recently learned from someone who actually majored in this subject that when men hear male bashing messages in their own languages, these men will produce less testosterone. This explains why I and many other men are so easily turned off physically. And I just found out what the reason was. I mean, I knew some of it, but I didn't realize specifically that particular cause. Now, I thank Allah that I can perform, but understand that the message of male bashing has consequences and they're permanent, but men are different. So there are men out there who cannot perform. They can't perform because of the years of messages of male bashing that they've heard. I'm not the only one dealing with consequences of these messages. I'm telling you these things about myself only because I'm not unique in this regard. There are other men, when they hear these things, and then they understand what they've been through and what happened to them. And there are other men who have worse trauma. This is not necessarily a trauma of mine, but a consequence, but there are other men who have trauma and triggers. It's a good thing that men have lower testosterone today because it translates to lesser libidos. If I knew a way to completely remove the male libido with no other side effects, I'd tell men for $1 or I'd sell it for $1. End of. It's exactly what ladies seem to be asking for, really, which is why I would say that. Can't you all just do these things for women without asking for anything in return? We're not allowed to even ask you if you can validate your own husbands above and below the belt without asking for the world in return. Or just validate the man you want to marry without asking for the world in return. In short, I'm telling men to not approach it because everything is so one-sided these days, and it's been for decades, to the point that boy moms like Red Film Diaries are telling men things about women that explain why I said that the gender conflict is a war and not just a conflict. Look at the things that you want and look at what you're not willing to do. And if a man had the exact same terms, you would say that it's a gender war. When a man expresses something like that, everyone clowns him, and men join you. Women say this, oh, she knows her worth. That's a woman. That's a strong woman. Never mind that she just ran off most men simply because she's sitting up saying, you'll never be able to meet these terms. And then we find out that these same women saying this are single moms to men that don't meet any of these standards and don't have to, and don't even have to take care of their responsibilities. See, Red Film Diaries is telling us how women even come to negative conclusions about men. And frankly, the ways they come to these negative conclusions about men go hand in hand with everything that women say a real man will do. Do we not hear that a real man will accept her and her kids while he's childless? Do we not hear that a real man will protect her and ask nothing in return, even to the point of his own death, even if he doesn't know her? Do we not hear that a real man will go and change her tire at 2 a.m. while she's on the way home from a ding-a-ling appointment with the same guy about whom she complained to this real man? Well, if you ask Red Film Diaries, when men do these very things themselves cause women to lose respect for the same men who do them. So to even be respected enough by these women, we men have to deny the things that ladies want. Well, then let's start with the first thing women want and yet will not give in exchange: the initiative, the first approach. Everything else gets easy after that. Mind you, I'm talking about in the West. We have to not approach it just to keep any respect we might have. We already lose some respect in a woman's eyes in the West when we approach her. You see what the wuck is happening here? 87% of cold approaches fail, according to a dating website study that Mumia Obsidian Ali talked about in 2019 in the spring or the beginning of the summer. You take the other 13% of times it doesn't fail, the man has to take all initiatives for anything he wants. And if she wants the same thing, he still has to take the initiative. And it's something that she wants more than he does, he has to take the initiative. And it's something she wants that he doesn't want, he has to take the initiative. Like a state-sanctioned marriage, for example, he has to propose, yet it's not a good deal legally or culturally for him. And in most cases, after he's done all of this and taken the initiative to go from every single step to the next step, the first initiative that many women take is to file for divorce. The first initiative that some of those women take, and we don't know how many, is to start an adulterous affair and cheat on him before leaving him. The last initiative that many of them take is to go for his wealth and custody of his kids. There are wives who never approached a man or even initiated bumping uglies, marital relations with even their husbands, and they turn around and they initiate an adulterous affair. Now, we don't know how common it is, but it's more common than men or women think. So why should men make any efforts just for these results? You're going to ask me, well, why should women make any efforts to get these men? But my question is a better question to ask. The game's rigged. And in the context of golden folks, it's not going to change between MLS men and women overnight. So is it fine for the two to work together for a safe environment and fair treatment? These are the goals. Certainly, as long as this cooperation is sincere and double-sided. Absolutely, as best we can. But can we start endogamy already? Well, this generation's not ready, and it's not because of the men. It's only the men that are forced to realize how bad it is for real. If you really want to know the truth, the women don't have to see how jacked up it is when they're young and fertile and childless. No one's forcing them to see it. And this is because, again, how we're both taught. And now what we men are saying is, and what I'm telling men is, until they do see such, until they listen to Crimson Cure, Red Femme Diaries, pretty much everybody that you all would call a pick-me or a mammy, you ain't gonna get it. And until that is the case, there's a big old world out there. And we understand, I'm gonna tell y'all this, some of you that are quite misandric or misandrist, however you want to pronounce it, are also very active in trying to spread this message abroad. And keep in mind, I live abroad, and I see what the results are. And there are enough of us in positions to put a stop to this mess. So we're going to make sure, not so much that we instill oppression, because see, I'm against that as well. Do not oppress and do not be oppressed. That applies even to men and women. But we're now in a position to make sure that we do not lose. That there will always be some part of the world where we can go and find someone that is feminine and cooperative, if not outright submissive or whatever else you don't want to say. I'm talking to those of you that are misandrist and misandric. And I'm only answering this question and addressing you because I promised to do so in part 1. And this is part 2. That's the only reason. Me delivering the promise. Best of luck to you, but in the meantime, a lot of us are going to be busy with our real lives. So I'm going to get back to mine now. Thank you for listening. As usual, you now understand why I say what I say at the end. Black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum. And black and golden. Heterosexual, non-selective male power, because you don't like it. And black and golden, patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.